I'm John Nixon from Eagle Lake Woodworking, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made this display case. It's meant to house our nation's symbol, the American flag, as well as a certificate below. The joinery for the case is straightforward and simple, using the table saw, a biscuit joiner, and the router table. The corners of the case feature a unique inlay of contrasting wood that resembles a dovetail joint, but it's much easier to make using a simple jig on the router table, and I'll show you how to make that too. This was a great project that will preserve and protect our nation's symbol for years to come. Let me show you how it's made.
Before we begin, let's take a look at the plan. The display case is made up of two elements, the rectangle and the 90-degree right triangle above. Each of these elements is made of the same stock, this L-shaped glue-up with the dimensions shown here. The first thing we need to do is plane down some material to 1/2 inch. After thicknessing the board to 1/2 inch, I move over to the joiner and clean up one edge. At the table saw, I'll take rips off this board that are 1.5 inches wide. For the top part of the L, I rip off strips that are 3/8 of an inch wide from a board that's 1.25 inches thick. Now it's time to glue them up. I line up all the glued up sections so that I can clamp them all at once. I flip this whole assembly over and then tap with a block to make sure everything's flush. After the L-shape assemblies are dry, I chamfer off the corner on the router table. I'm using this 22.5 degree chamfer bit, and I'll do this in 2 passes. First pass removes the bulk of the material, and then I can adjust the fence so that with the second pass I can chamfer right up to the seam where the two boards meet. By chamfering exactly to that seam, two pieces blend together and look like one piece of stock. I start with the miters for the rectangular portion of the case, and this is just like making a picture frame, but I'll show you my method for creating miters that are dead on accurate. I begin by setting the miter gauge 45 degrees. I'm going to cut the right hand miter on all 4 boards. That's the miter for one of the boards, and here's the same angle miter for the second board. I do that on all 4 before switching the sled to the other side of the table saw. And now I've installed a stop block that will cut the 2 long pieces to identical length. I move the stop block in and I cut the 2 short pieces to identical length. Using this method will ensure a square case with accurate miters that come together at 90 degrees. Now it's time to make the miters for the triangle. Where the base and the sides meet is a 22.5 degree angle. This translates to 67.5 degrees for my miter sled. I don't have that mark on my sled, so I use an adjustable protractor to set the sled. Using this setup, I can cut one of the angles of the base and one of the angles of the side. And I switch the sled over to the other side of the blade and do the same. By placing the base and one of the sides into position, I can use a square to project the center up to the point of the triangle and know where to cut the sides at a 45 degree angle. If I need to tweak these angles, I can clamp a 45 degree board to the table on my horizontal belt sander and just take a little bit off until they fit perfect. Now it's time to assemble the rectangle and the triangle. The miter joints are reinforced by using a number 0 biscuit in the corners. As you can see, I had just enough room to squeeze in a 0 biscuit without it protruding through the top. little bit of yellow glue on the miter, the biscuit, and in the biscuit slot, and the whole thing comes together nicely. I use clamps in both directions to pull the miters together tightly. I check it for square. If anything's out of alignment, I can make an adjustment with a clamp diagonally across the glue up. Now to assemble the triangle. There's one biscuit at the point of the triangle that I can keep in place using masking tape. Where the base meets the sides, I use yellow glue and hit it with the brad nailer from underneath. These nails will be concealed when we join the triangle to the rectangle. Now it's time to make these dovetail accents in the corners of the rectangle and the triangle. To do this, we'll make a jig for the router table. I start by making 4 right triangles by cutting a square into 4 pieces. Next, I'll glue and nail these triangles to a baseboard. At the drill press, I'll drill 1 1/4" holes for clamps. This creates a V that allows me to support the workpiece as it moves through the router bit. First thing I'm doing is to initialize the jig by making a 1/2 inch hole in the bottom. This allows the router bit to come up through. Before I can use the jig, I need to make the slot for the router bit. With the router running, I move the jig back and forth in both directions to create a channel for the router bit. Using the jig is simple. The workpiece gets placed inside the V and clamped into place. And then turn on the router and gently and slowly push it forward to create the channel in the corner of the workpiece. We do the same method on all 3 corners of the triangle. With the table saw blade set to 15 degrees, I'll cut the material that will get inserted into the dovetail channels we just made. Using light passes at the joiner, I can size this material until it matches the exact profile of the router bit. Once I've achieved a good fit in the dovetail channels, I'll cut little wedges at the bandsaw for each corner. Then it's just a matter of spreading yellow glue inside the channel and inserting the wedge. I sand the wedges flush with the side of the case using the horizontal belt sander. With the triangle and the rectangle complete, I can glue them together using yellow glue and clamps. When this assembly is dry, it's time for finish sanding. I'll work through the grits using 150 and then ending up at 220.